Thank you, everyone, for joining us here in Istanbul, the lovely city, and in Istanbul Fintech Week. Unfortunately, Onur will not be able to join us, but we will be here with Kürşat and Reese today, and hopefully give you some great information about where the Web3 and blockchain practices are going on. And this is Elçin from Solak & Partners. We had a brief introduction from the team. But please, if you want to say something about yourselves, go on. If not, we can also start with the questions as well.
You can just go ahead and start.
Okay, that's okay.
Sure.
That's great. Okay, so maybe with the first question that we have. So today we will talk about Web3, and that's a hard concept for a lot of us. Especially for a lawyer like me, but we want to understand, what's the internal journey and organization shifts that the institutions need to undergo when the real-world integration of Web3 is on the line. So what we understand from Web3 and what do you think about it? If it's okay, we may start with Reese.
Sure. Firstly, amazing to be here. So I'm coming over from Dubai, so it was a pleasant surprise to walk out and experience a nicer climate. So yeah, look, I think we are going through a pace of change within Web3 as it relates to financial services, which is kind of unprecedented at the moment. And I think we're seeing at Ripple, we've been 12 plus years kind of building for large FIs. So we provide crypto infrastructure, blockchain technology, to move funds in real time as it relates to cross-border payments. We also offer custody solutions, and we've recently launched our own stablecoin, USD-backed stablecoin as well. So, what I would say, if you're an institution, is first and foremost, they're seeking the comfort from the regulators before they enter into this space. And I would say that the Capital Markets Board, TÜBİTAK, Central Bank have been forthcoming with providing a framework in this region, which as a result we're seeing a ton of growth and development there. But what then comes with that? And I think what's important is that you have some large FIs who have legacy systems. They need to partner with enterprise infrastructure providers who understand both the Web3 space and also the traditional finance world. And we went through our own journey when we launched our custody product, because should we buy, should we build? And we saw Metaco, who are a Swiss-based enterprise custody solution, that they had technology that fit within the bank's requirements. So they had governance, they had cold storage, they had HSM. So when you are bridging that gap between new technology and legacy technology, you really need to have technology that can basically mesh them together. And that's what we're finding is a lot of interest in this region for that. So partnerships, collaboration, in order to take that step into the new phase.
That was a great answer. Actually, I think a lot of the people here will also acknowledge, when you're trying to add a new technology to your financial institution, your startup, anything, especially when they're regulated, is really hard to find those connections, as you have mentioned, and to integrate something new to an already working system. And that also requires a lot of thought around it, a lot of regulation around it, and sometimes the ongoing regulations will not fit in that place. So it's really important to have a lot of partnerships who understands the struggle of working in a regulated environment. And maybe I can move to Kürşat and ask, what central bank is doing to adopt these new Web3 technologies in our life, and his opinions also about Web3 and how it will be affecting our lives in general.
Thank you. I mean, when you consider that Web3 is actually more like decentralization, but actually shifting the trust paradigm to a more technology-oriented landscape. So when you consider that central bank is actually a public authority, I mean, institutional approach could be maybe could be treated as in different ways. So one version could be that as a regulator, we could be basically building a platform or a regulatory environment that enables these solutions to go forward. But obviously, Web3 has a lot of domain that falls outside of the central bank's domain. So there are all the different regulatory bodies there. And for us, as in the payments domain, we are considering in some aspects CBDC falls within Web3, and these are if you consider peer-to-peer payments, but non-proximity offline payments. Those payments kind of fall within the Web3 domain because in those payments the ownership stays with the user. It's different than the current bank deposits approach. So how do you actually implement that the user has the sole ownership of their money? So it's more similar like having a banknote, and in that sense, achieving that can be done with digitally verifiable credentials, and these credentials basically shift the trust from more centralized single entity operators to more decentralized trust fabric, let's say. So that's one way Web3 has some occurrence. Another way could be that we are actually trying to build a programmable payment platform. In that, I think there will be a lot more participants than a single, like a system operator participantship. Basically, in a programmable payment platform, in a programmable ecosystem, there will be the users, the programmable template developers, the issuers, the verifiers, the holders. They all can contribute to basically building these programmable solutions. And in that sense, basically the innovation is also spread. I mean, the participation base is widened, and Web3 I think has a similar idea. In the sense, the CBRT in payments domain thinks that maybe the retail ownership and the programmable payments platform could basically be in line with the Web3 ideology.
That's really interesting, and thank you very much for this insight as well. And maybe for, if that's fine, participants who may not be very accustomed with Turkish regulation and Turkish law, just to give you an idea of what's happening, the Capital Markets Board, which we just listened, has a regulation on crypto assets and the licensing of the platforms. And, as explained in the first session as well, they have a very broad regulatory authority around, crypto assets and everything coming with it. But they also noted very carefully that the other regulators also have their spaces. And in Turkey, payment institutions are regulated by central bank, and accordingly, there can be a lot of interplay between the crypto asset service providers, as we understand it, like trading authorities, custody providers, but also there is a payment side, which everyone is excited to see, what the future will bring. And maybe I can ask this second question to you following Dan Kürşat. So how do you see the payment sector and will develop, and will there be any Web3 implications around it?
I mean, I think we really should, separate the crypto assets and maybe like the idea of Web3. So, but regarding your question as for the crypto assets, I mean, payments with crypto assets was not actually, well, there is like a shift in the world towards the stable coins right now, and there are some countries that are actually treating stable coins as electronic money tokens, payment tokens, which basically means that the technology is not really that important, the underlying blockchain. For the regulator's perspective, it still is treated like an e-money instrument, and the responsibility stays with the issuer. Yep. But of course, there are some operational resilience and operational risks to consider. But this is some approach that the stable coins can be treated as electronic money. But of course, I mean, you probably know better, but there are a lot of different acts, like in US and in European Union as well. The three stablecoins different than existing instruments. So, I mean, there are some considering it to be e-money, there are some considering it to be money market funds, bank deposit likened to these kinds of instruments. But I think time will tell. Central bank is also working towards, I mean, we are clearly researching and doing our best to adapt to the evolving changes.
Thank you very much for this answer. And maybe I'll go to a different path of questions, Therese. And, you know, when Web3 is adopted by traditional FIs, you sometimes see a swing between, you know, some enthusiastic embrace of it, or sometimes very deep skepticism, thinking, you know, it will not work together. What are your thoughts about it? What should be the financial institutions look at these new Web3 products?
I would say, look, I understand there's a lot of skepticism as it relates to, you know, financial services offering, you know, Web3 technology, you know, when trust, compliance are, you know, a non-negotiable. What I would say is that I've been working for Ripple at 7 years now. I can say I was based in London originally. Going into a bank 7 years ago and mentioning the word crypto, honestly, like, people used to get very uncomfortable in their seats. You know, they're going to be escorting me off the building by security here. Now I can say, you know, fast forward certainly 5 years, the last couple of years, those same financial institutions are inviting us back in to provide them with what their strategy looks like as it relates to implementing, you know, this technology. And I think so. I would say that, you know, there's still going to be skepticism, but I think there's definitely more embrace, tons of enthusiasm, and the market has evolved significantly. And I think there's a few reasons why. I would say there's probably been some, you know, big validation, the likes of, you know, BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, Standard Chartered, these big guys coming in and almost validating the space, you know, certainly helps validate, but also enforce crypto regulation, right? Which I think is needed. We mentioned, you know, Ripple are a US company, headquartered company. I can tell you, it's not been fun in the US from a regulatory standpoint. I'm fortunate enough that I reside in the UAE, where there is regulation. I think Turkey is certainly in a position where they are building a framework which again allows that innovation. So, you know, it's consumer demand, it's the validation, and it's regulation. And I think that is forcing, you know, these large FIs to, you know, to step into the space. It's table stakes as it stands.
That's really interesting. And do you also think that, you know, a lot of maybe innovative financial institutions will be involved in the place? And what do you think will be the forefronts of it? Will it be the banks? Will it be the credit institutions? You know, do you have any idea around what will happen in the future?
Look, I think it's going to be a combination of all of the above. I think that people are viewing the first movers. They're seeing kind of, you know, how they're stepping into the space. I would say it's quite vast in terms of globally. We see very different use cases. I think that certainly across the Middle East, Africa, and Turkey, we're seeing custody as the entry point. So banks, you know, want to be able to implement something that can give their board comfort, where there is regulation and what they are familiar with, right? So banks custody assets for a long time. People trust them, and that's where we're seeing a lot of growth on our side as it relates to our product, Ripple Custody. But yeah, I think we'll continue to see a convergence, but yeah, the big players will move and the rest will follow in suit, I would say.
No, that's great to learn. And just to keep, you know, the participants updated on that front, for the Turkish side, the regulation, as you know, summarized in the morning, suggests that every crypto asset service provider agree with a custodian service provider by December. And you know, the way the regulation is created, it seems as giving a very big part to the banks in Turkey. And for anyone who is not aware, Turkey has a very strong banking space, where, as you have mentioned, they're very experienced on custody part, but they're also very experienced with the technological part of it as well. So, so I think that they will do a great job of having that. Yeah.
Just I guess a quick plug here. So Ripple, as an institution, we have part of our business which is Ubria, which is University Blockchain Research Initiative. And what we do is we go with universities globally and we fund projects and education and courses for kind of the next generation of entrepreneurs, builders, developers. And we've recently just partnered with Istanbul Technology University to kind of bring that here because, when you look at innovation globally and where it's happening, there's so much happening in this space, in this country, and we certainly want to be part of that there. So just as it relates to education, I just wanted to add that.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. And I believe, when these regulations push us to do great and more, and the Turkish regulation also have like a very strong technological requirement base. So I think a lot of the financial institutions will be required to invest on this, learn more about it, and create like really great technologies going ahead. And maybe I'll follow up with the third question just to connect it. So what will you recommend for smaller financial institutions, for example, Fintechs and startups, and how do you think they will have an effect on Web3? Maybe we can start with Kürşat, if that's okay.
When we look at like the Web3, I don't know, it has probably like 30,000, 40,000 developers around the world. So that total may be based on, summing up the distinct blockchain developers. So this space is not quite really unified. So I think a lot of firms the basic thing would be to entice more developers to the space, right? So the second thing would be to go for more, let's say, some domains that are not just payments, maybe, because fintech or Web3 is not just about payments. So maybe there could be a lot of different. There are a lot of different areas in like decentralized physical infrastructures, networks. There are a lot of different domains in Web3 that needs much more attention, but probably most of the attention goes to the payments domain. So, but I think the main shift, the main difference maker would be around the approach to document everything using cryptography, and these documents could then be used for financial applications like maybe collaterals or other proofs. But that first part for cryptography and having those verifiable cryptographically provable documents with the user is a valuable idea, and I don't think it gets some traction within European Union, but not that much, I think, around the world. So maybe look for these kinds of domains, but also to entice the developers. I think we actually need another abstraction, because these blockchains, it doesn't look like it, but basically this is an interoperability problem, and to basically overcome it, maybe another level of indirection, that the developers basically need to understand that their time that they put into that their work could translate to other opportunities. So I think that is what's missing currently, because even if the number looks high, it's not really enough when you look at a worldwide scale. So those two would be my approach.
Thank you very much for this. And you have mentioned that the central bank also have a programmable platform that will be happening. Do you think that will open new working grounds for financial institutions?
Yeah, obviously. What the financial institutions could do is to look for project participation calls, because they might get a lot of visibility in that sense. And our programmable payment platform is in incubation, let's say, but it would still be on a national level. So it would make it easier to participate in this system, because if you just run a system, then the operator is basically responsible of it, and the innovation is basically done by one single operator. So we do not really want that. We actually want the users to actually contribute to have it like a kind of a marketplace. But since it would be a digital public infrastructure, it would still be on a national level. So for Web3 to actually succeed, we need open standards and common standards to work through. I mean, the Web2, well, it is evolving to Web3, but it still has open protocol. So I mean, it's still decentralized in the sense that it doesn't really depend on a single operator. So there are some ideas that still works, and we actually need to build on those to basically really solve this interoperability problem.
Yeah, that's a really big problem. That's correct. But I think, a lot of the financial institutions and new fintechs will still be very lucky to, be involved in these kind of projects, with government authorities. And it is very kind and great that, you are making it and collaborating. That's really nice. And Reese, what would you suggest to smaller financial institutions? What should they do? How they look into the market?
I think my advice would be start small, but start fast in terms of smart as well. In a world where there's so much access for infrastructure providers who have that bridge between Web3 and also TradFi, look to partner. You don't always have to build stuff. Partnerships are often a good entry point because you are working with infrastructure that exists and looking how that can implement. So essentially taking out the heavy lifting, it reduces the amount, certainly the burden in terms of dev costs and build, and it allows you to validate the space. And we're seeing that a lot at the moment. And when I say start small, what I mean by that is, we'll often sit in front of a fintech who are trying to do 10 different projects at the same time. Which is great and honorable in terms of their, innovation they're trying to create. But at the same time, find an entry point, look to get something, look to validate, and then look to grow and into phase 2, phase 3, and certainly that's kind of our approach. And here, certainly, we're seeing custody as that entry point, but with future tokenization kind of discussions taking place as well.
That's, I think, really good advice to focus on some things. And, as a lawyer, I think I also meet with a lot of projects where there is a lot of points, but it is tricky to even understand one product and, implement it to a system where there is already a regulation, try to fit everything in. So I think that's a really, really great advice on that part, that they should be looking into, what's happening, looking into partnerships. And you have mentioned, 7 years in Ripple.
Yes.
So that adds to the experience, and there is a lot of experience, for example, for a lot of FIs to gather from this kind of knowledge. It's a really young market, but it's also growing very fast, and so that kind of, I think, partnerships and experiences are really, really important.
I think there's a saying which is you're either at the table or on the menu, and I think that certainly in some regions, FIs are moving fast. They're looking at ways to kind of enter. In others, they're well behind the curve. So kudos to Turkey in terms of building out a framework that is allowing that innovation. So yeah, very, very great stuff happening here.
No, that's great to hear. We always think about that within here, but also, hearing this from foreign guests is always great. But, wherever you look, I think even in this conference, in this area, you'll see how Turkish people already embraced, a lot of the technology We're very technically capable, both on the, I think, development side and both on the user side, and we have been very lucky to be able to use a lot of great products. So I think it also makes things hard for Web3 because our Web2 applications are also great, but there's a lot of ways of moving forward, and both Turkey's approach to it and Turkish people's approach to it is, I think, very positive on that regard. Absolutely. And I also believe that. So as we're coming to the last minutes, maybe I'll ask if you have any final notes, final comments to any of the participants or financial institutions in total. Kürşat, would you have some final remarks?
Yeah, I mean, well, basically Web2 have a successful journey for Web3. We need to overcome the the trust issues. I mean, it wants to evolve trust, but there is also some trust issue in the way that people approach to Web3. And I think the way to do it maybe is to, like jointly developing these open standards, open protocols that are basically the foundation of the internet today. And instead of a divergence, we really should work for a convergence, and hopefully then it will get adopted quickly. And I think afterwards the institutions will follow as well.
Yeah, I think so. So a global conformity, having some standards to work on is really important, as you have suggested, and what I took note from here. So thank you very much. And Reese, would you have some final remarks?
Look, absolutely so grateful to be here, and so grateful to sit in a conference room with a completely packed room. It's quite a rare find. What that shows is the level of interest, the level of innovation, and certainly, things are getting done here. So very grateful to be here, and we're around the next couple of days, so it'd be good to connect with many of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And maybe, as a final remarks today, it has been talked a lot, but because we're thinking about Web3, we are facing this important deadline on June 30th with a lot of the CASPs. And I think after that application, what we see in the crypto market will also be more open to how the Turkish market will look. And we also have additional deadlines coming in December. We also expect a lot of new regulations coming in, and there is, I think, a lot of opportunities in the Turkish market. Web3 is really hard to regulate and maybe should not be regulated in some instances. But I think this, regulations coming into standardized financial institutions will also open up a lot of pathway because they have the resources, they have the users, and they have all these experience in behind. So as a lawyer, I'm very excited to see what will happen, and it's really great to hear your thoughts and have you here as well. And thank you for all the participants for bearing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.